What exactly happened to flight AI-171 Ahmedabad to London? It's going to be a week now since that terrible tragedy in which 241 out of 242 people on board died. The black boxes, that is both the CVR, the cockpit voice recorder, and what is called the DFR, both have been recovered. The FDR, which is the flight data recorder, both now have been recovered. The black box essentially contains these two components, the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder. What do they exactly store, and what is it that the information that they can reveal, which can lead to some clues as to what led to the crash of AI-171? Now, contrary to what the name suggests, the black box is not black in color. It is actually bright orange in color. Two very tough devices that are designed to survive up to 1,000 degrees centigrade of heat. They're designed to survive crashes. Even if they sink in the ocean, the data that is stored in them can be retrieved. One of the components is the flight data recorder, which basically tracks everything about the flight, whether it's its path, the altitude, the speed, the engine health, the control inputs, the manual inputs that are being fed in to the instrumentation by the pilots. All of that gets recorded in what's called the flight data recorder. The second one, which was recovered today, the second part, the first part was recovered last weekend itself, the first part of the black box. The second part, which is the cockpit voice recorder, is an equally important component because it records all the conversations that happen inside the cockpit, whether it's between the pilot and the co-pilot, between the pilot and any of the crew who are present there, between the pilot and the air traffic control, all communications, and even background noises that happen inside the cockpit, whether it's alarms, engine noise, any sirens going off, all of that gets captured in the CVR, or the cockpit voice recorder. Now, this black box does hold a significant keys, in fact, many answers as to what led to the crash of flight AI-171 will be known with the de-encryption of both the black boxes, the CVR and the FDR. But now there's a new video. Now, this is part of the old video that surfaced on the very first day, but we didn't have the original, which was shot by a class 12 student on his rooftop. He lives in this locality just on the outskirts of the Ahmedabad airport. His name is Aryan Asari. Now, if you listen to this video, and we're going to turn up the volume on this video, we're going to show full frame. Listen to the sound. You can hear a clear sound of an engine rolling. Now, this is not like the engine that is normally what is seen in a 787 or a 777. Those are heavy-duty engines. This noise that you hear is a loud, high-pitched noise. It's almost like a propeller, like these twin-engine flights, these small aircraft that fly, or even like something like a small motor that runs, that pipes up a turbine. It's called the RAT, or the Ram Air Turbine system. Now, this is a small engine that is attached to the bottom part of the fuselage of the aircraft. It drops down only if all other functions fail, or all other engines fail. Now, I want you to first listen to the sound. I'll play that full frame, and then I'll go across to what is the importance of the RAT. The engine sound is very different from what you would hear in a jetliner like a 777 or a 787. So that particular sound that you hear, it's like a race bike or a race car going. It's like it races up, and then, of course, within seconds, the flight descends and it crashes. That racing sound is from the RAT engine. You can also look at, if you freeze frame, you can also look at the freeze frame. You can see something popping out from the bottom of the aircraft, and that is what is called a Ram aviation turbine. The investigation into these emergency systems show that the RAT is always deployed when both the engines fail. Now, according to aviation experts, the RAT was activated in this case. Here you see this thing that is falling off from the bottom of the aircraft. That is the RAT. There's a door latch that opens, the RAT comes down. Basically, it uses the wind energy to try and give further thrust and further power to the aircraft. This is the latest theory that has emerged. The RAT, or the Ram Air Turbine, It's a wind turbine that's connected to a hydraulic pump or a generator. It's a critical emergency backup system on modern aircraft like the 777s, the 787s. It provides both electrical and hydraulic pressure during an emergency. It provides power in case there's a power failure in the main power generation systems. Now, there are two ways that a RAT gets deployed. The automatic deployment happens when there is a complete loss of either electrical power or if both engines fail. Manually, the pilot can manually deploy the RAT by activating a switch or pulling a lever that's there in the cockpit, and that is used if the automatic system for deploying the RAT fails. Now, the sequence, if you look at the sequencing of how the RAT is deployed, firstly, there has to be a complete failure of the main electrical or hydraulic systems. That has to be sensed by the sensors inside the cockpit. Then they direct the RAT deployment mechanism to get activated. Basically, there's a spring-loaded or hydraulic mechanism which pushes the RAT out of where it's housed, and that is at the bottom part of the fuselage, between the wheels. Then as the aircraft moves forward, the air pressure spins the RAT's propeller, and at last the RAT then drives an emergency generator or a hydraulic pump, and thereby restoring just sufficient power to operate the essential systems so that the captain has enough maneuvering time to move it to a safe location and land, or circle back to the airport, as in the case of 171, because they had just taken off. Now, the spotlight on the possible double engine failure means that the safety of flyers continues to be a bit of a concern, particularly since two India-bound Dreamliners faced mid-air scares just within hours of this tragedy that unfolded last week. Now, a Chennai-bound British Airways Boeing Dreamliner 787 was forced to go back to London midway after it encountered a technical snag. This happened on the 15th of June, just 3 days after what we saw happen to Air India 171. The flight reportedly took off after over 35 minutes of delay. It encountered a problem with the flaps, and today an Air India Dreamliner 787 bound to Delhi from Hong Kong was also forced to return. The aircraft returned 90 minutes after takeoff, following a suspected technical issue that was flagged by the pilots. And then they landed there, and the pilots then, there is a conversation that has also come out between the pilots and the ATC, where the pilots are saying that we can't fly this aircraft until this technical issue is solved. Captain Rotre, you heard the sound, you've seen the theories, you've seen the footage. Does this seem to be the most proximate explanation to you as to what happened to Air India Flight 171?
Hi, good evening, Zata. Good evening, everybody. There are too many conspiracy theories, too many photos, videos, blurred videos, and initially a lot of so ultimately one would decide to just wait for the DFDR data. But now, we've been all following. We've been trying to get great footage. We wanted to get, because whenever we zoomed in, the footage would just blurt off. It would just crack up. But now that we have got a better footage, people have got better angles to it. Of course, the sound effect, it is the RAT, like what you said exactly, Ram Air Turbine. That is the third line of defense. Remember, the primary set of systems are there for hydraulics, but then there's a standby for hydraulics, and then the third line of defense is Ram Air Turbine. Even for the electrics, there are 2-3 conditions where the Ram Air Turbine automatically deploys. Majorly when we have two dual engine failures, is automatically deploys. Even it automatically deploys when you have a complete electrical failure, or in case you have hydraulic and electrical failure, the Ram Air turbines automatically deploy. So that means the aircraft was having severe issues. And what we suspect here, what I initially did suspect, we were doubting about the landing of some first officer mistake or the pilot mistake. They didn't take the gear up.
Yeah.
But now if you check the gear also, the gear the wheel tilt angle is changed. The tilt angle generally is different. And when you try to retract it, the tilt angle of the wheels are different. So they did try. I can assume, I cannot say everything is 100%, but with my experience, I can see the tilt angle different. That's what some of the US pilots also have found out from these original videos. So they did try to retract the gear. It didn't retract. So that means there was an hydraulic or electrical issue. And about the flaps, it's really blurred. So flaps, we're not sure, but some saying that in the accident sites, we can see the flaps extended, but you can't be sure in accident sites. because after a damage, the flaps can actually be extended. When a damaged wing is there, you never know it was intact or not intact. So that part we are not sure.
So, Captain,
But I'm
can I
very,
come
very
back
sure.
to the first two
Yeah.
scenarios that you had said? There's either a hydraulic failure or an electric failure, or both hydraulics and
Or
electronics
combination of both. Yeah. Yeah.
completely
Right.
fail. Under what
Right.
circumstances do such things happen? But because it's, again, quite rare, certainly it hasn't happened on the 787, that both hydraulics and the electronics have failed.
Yeah, right. It's never happened. It's rarely possible because we have a system which is backed up by a standby system, and the standby system is backed up by an additional
Yeah.
backup system like the Ram Air Turbine. So we have three stages of protection. So having failure, complete failure ever, it's not possible. That is what Boeing even says, and even we, as practical pilots and practicing so many maneuvers in our simulators and daily life, like when we are flying, we have not seen such kind of failure ever. Even using the standby system is very rare. So it is unbelievable that this has happened, and definitely at 600 feet, the way the aircraft stopped climbing, no matter what was your weight, no matter what was the atmospheric conditions, if you had both the thrusts working, the aircraft would have not descended. I'm not saying that if, in case we had some issues, multiple system failure, but we
Okay.
still had the thrust, the aircraft wouldn't have descended. We would have not climbed in the normal climb profile. We would have climbed very slowly. But in case we had the full thrust on, and the experienced Captain Savarwal had, he knew what pitch angle to maintain, the nose, which angle to maintain, so that my speed doesn't wash off. I can safely get out of that situation and slowly climb out of the situation. So
All
it's
right.
very difficult to believe because the engines are so efficient. It's got so much of power. So the first time I always believed there is going to be some issues with the thrust. I'm not saying it was a zero thrust issue, that both the engines were totally zero. I was suspecting the amount of thrust being produced is way less than what it required to be. So
Okay.
that is definitely something related to the engine power. Otherwise, the rat immediately deploys automatically
Yeah.
when they sense that both engines are not producing enough power. So you can see you can hear the sound, and when you zoom in clearly, some of the videos, you can
Yeah, you
see
can see the.
something protruding out where the rat is supposed to be, and that is how the rat behaves. It's a propeller thing. It's going to make a lot of noise, and it is going to try to work with the standby system. It's going to try to give some electrics to the engine igniters so that
All right.
it keeps trying to restart the engine. So it's a very important part of the airplane, but that comes out only when you're in emergency. And the most important part is Captain Savarwal did say Mayday, no power or no thrust. I don't remember exactly what he said. He said no power or no thrust. That itself is a great indication that he was facing thrust issues. That means he was facing issues with the engines. That is period. I'm sure by now the DFDR has all the data. I'm
All
sure
right.
the committee must have already got it incorporated with their software. I'm sure they know what is the preliminary direction of inquiry. They know the preliminary mistake or preliminary issue or the defect with the aircraft. They will come out with their own time, and they'll come out
All
with
right.
with a proper bureaucratic
Investigation.
way of
Yeah.
reporting. But I'm sure they know by now what has happened.
All right, Captain Manmoth, thank you very much. And once again, condolences. I know you knew Captain Sabarwal well. You trained under him. Thank you very much for joining us here on CNN
Thank
News
you.
18 with
Thank
your
you, Zafar.
expertise
Thank
on
you.
this. Thank you.